What is a sign that someone was poorly raised? There is a family vlogging channel called Life Where I'm From. They just to feature their kids, and believe me, those kids were loving being on camera every second. But people noticed that after a while the kids weren't in the videos. The father said that they stopped feeling comfortable on camera and he wasn't going to force them to be in the videos. That's how you run a correct family vlogging channel. A teenager posted on AITA a few years ago. Her mother was a mommy blogger and she was sick of it, so she got hoodies with things printed on them like "I do not consent to this" etc., and would wear them constantly so her mother couldn't use her in photos or videos. The mother was really annoyed, but I thought it was genius. She just wanted her privacy, which the mother didn't respect. Of course, the mother had always been the type to say that her daughters loved being on camera and if they ever wanted to stop, she would. These people get addicted to the fame and attention and don't want to stop. This is my cousin. She has always been obsessed with putting out this type of perception about herself and her family out there. When social media started with all the influencers, she was on top of it. Perfect family photos. White smiles. Matching designer outfits. Perfect looking backgrounds, etc. She has always overshared the most impeccable looking pictures of her family since they were born. The kids have now grown up and are approximately 15 and 16 and are just rebelling the crap out of her perfect picture. I've noticed that they are not much in the pictures anymore. It's just her, her life, her yoga, her pool, her kitchen, her friends, and her date nights out. In US it is standard for customer to clear table, but this is not universal everywhere in the world, and in some places in Europe, Asia, and elsewhere people just leave their dirty trays on the table. Once I was at a McDonald's in Asia and after I finished eating I was walking around looking for the place to put the tray, and when an employee saw me they jumped out from behind the counter and took the tray from me, and made me feel like I was committing a major faux pas. Now when I travel, I always sit long enough to observe what other customers are doing after they finish. Are they just leaving their trays on the table or bringing them somewhere, and I follow their lead. A little while ago, I had just broken up with my then boyfriend and was still living with him and our roommate when I was planning to move back to my dad's. Our roommate was my ex's best friend back then and was on student loans. His check would only come in at a certain time during the month, so we had an arrangement to front him his part of the loan until he had his money to pay us back. This worked fine until one day. My ex-BF threatened my roommate that he'll bash his fucking brains in while I was away for the weekend because he asked for the rent and my roommate said he has not received his check yet. This was the first time it ever happened. I got the most freaked out text from my roommate saying he locked himself in his room, that he was scared to come out and wanted to know when I'd be back. I don't regret dumping this asshole. Company I worked for held an annual Chinese food lunch at a good restaurant, but the ordering was chaos. The boss's wife insisted on including an order of black bean prawns, which was a pricier dish and one would not be enough to go around, but he ordered one anyway. In the chaos of plates and bowls going back and forth, the prawns made it to M, beside me. M had a 5-inch high heap of food I knew he wouldn't get through, but it didn't seem to bother him. He casually nabbed the last 2 prawns and added them to his stack. By the time we were all stuffed, the prawns were still sitting there. And the stack was down to 3 inches, which didn't bother him in the slightest. I really appreciated the excellent meal, but M just got on my nerves. It was just the complete lack of consideration for others. My husband does this shit. He's a big dude. I've lost a lot of weight over the last couple of years, and because of that my appetite just isn't what it used to be, resulting in me eating only 1 or 2 decent meals a day. I still snack when I feel like it and use other nutritional supplements. He constantly has the audacity to eat anything he sees sitting out unattended without asking if anyone is still eating it, like a burger I was taking a bite out of now and then as I was doing chores, This was after I had gotten him and the kid McDonald's, and I had decided not to get anything, but we were given an extra burger on accident. Pouting face. That's just one example. It makes him seem so fucking selfish to literally take food out of the mouth of the person who eats the least in the entire household. I've never told him, but it makes me think of the Family Guy scene with John Goodman. Weary face. I lived in an apartment complex near a shopping center for a couple of years. Residents would do their shopping, walk it home in a cart, then leave the cart next to the big dumpster near the entry. Not just inconsiderate enough to not take the cart back to the store, they also made it harder for us all to dump our trash and harder for the waste management company to collect the trash. I started taking the carts back myself early in the mornings 2 to 3 times a week for exercise. I think I inadvertently made the problem worse. Unfortunately, I've had to leave it before. First time I went out on my own after chemo, I did a quick trip for like bread and milk. By the time I got to the car, there was no way I could both put the cart away and walk back to my car without collapsing in the parking lot. Happened once before I was diagnosed as well. I had a mass the size of a post-it on my sternum, though at the time, we were trying to figure out what was causing my pain on my sternum. I couldn't breathe. Had to lay down across my seat and catch my breath just to not pass out. I felt like a monster both times. I work at an expensive summer camp where the majority kids are from out of state and just vacation where I am for the beach. There's a distinct difference between the kids with parents who flash their wealth and the kids whose families have money but don't show it off. The kids have threatened to get me fired before for making them sit out for 5 minutes for hitting. They make fun of other kids for doing things like shopping at Target and Walmart and have even made fun of me for driving a POS car. My friends at work and I always joke that the kids are mini Karens, but it's honestly scary thinking that these kids are growing up thinking they're entitled to do anything they want and say anything they want. I'm worried about the future. I'll be honest, I've had a whole lot of WTF moments when I see a bunch of people parading those ideals around. Not enough to flip my vote, but it gives me plenty of opportunities to brush up on my research and analysis skills from college. In fact, it can be fun to use personal professional experience to debunk a lot of conspiracy theories. I would have to remind folks that vaccine hesitancy is not necessarily an all right-wing crazy ideal. There's some genuinely concerned folks who would never swing right who are worried about vaccines. People who put their dirty dishes in the sink instead of the dishwasher that's 1 foot away when the clean/dirty magnet says dirty, and they don't come back later to take care of their pile of dishes because they innocently didn't have time earlier. They just expect someone else, usually a female, to do it, when she works a full-time job and shops for groceries and takes care of the kids and changes the oil in the car and mows the lawn and bathes the dog and. The worst thing I once saw was with a dude I was dating, and he asked me if I could teach him and his sister how to cook, because his parents never teached them. They still lived with their mom. And I'm not talking about difficult things. I had to teach him how to prepare different ways of an egg without ruining it. I'm talking really basic things. They mostly only ate pre-made meals for in a microwave or takeout. Grinning face with sweat, grinning face with sweat. Manners are the formalized version of basic courtesy. We have table manners because it's disgusting to watch someone shovel in food, using their fist, eating with an open mouth, and then talking that way. You're not a rebel or a do-it-my-way person if that's how you eat, you're just disrespecting your hosts. All the little social rules we have are just that, courtesy to your fellow citizens, and the way you would hope they'd treat you. Thinking life is fair. Not only is the entire concept of fair subjective to the idea of the expected outcome, but life itself is not a system of processes, which means you can do everything the same as someone else and get different results. In fact, our most fair systems are intentionally imbalanced with ethical concepts in mind. So believing that life is supposed to be fair is a sign of their parents failing to help them understand that life is not a system itself but chaotic in its very nature. Happy for ya. Mine were more liberal with it, particularly my dad. Stuck in the 60s, famed minority beater, actually once had a swastika tattoo. Anger and aggression were his two sole emotions, especially when the topic was how I'd be as an adult. Wanna know what's fucking wild, though? Nowadays, he's the more approachable parent. He really got his shit together. He's hard-headed and stubborn, but I'm proud of the man he's become. Today I'm everything he hated 20 years ago, but the guy constantly tells me how proud of me he is. He's got the beginnings of a good man now, but the old wounds are still there. I never thought elders were any more deserving of respect than anyone else. But I do think one owes courtesy to everyone, unless experience has somehow told you someone isn't worthy of it. But courtesy should be your baseline. Hopefully, the vast majority of people will earn some degree of your respect, even if it's for the simplest thing. She always smiles and greets me as we pass, regardless of age. Sometimes, elders need help getting by, and assisting them across a street or onto a bus is courtesy, in my book. I will say it depends. While there are some common signs we can all agree on, littering for example, there are others that will be seen as a problem in certain culture but not a problem in other, and if you tell me you are right and they are wrong here, then I guess we can agree that you are poorly raised since you are lacking respect for a culture that is different to yours. Here is a simple example. In North American culture there are a lot of things that they won't tell you, or even say the opposite of the truth to make you feel good about yourself. I'm not talking about malicious lie here. They believe that will encourage you to get better at something, for example, and while this is done with good intentions, some cultures will feel very offended and it will even have the opposite effect on them. Of course the opposite works too. In those other cultures they will be more straightforward or blunt about things. Part of the reasons is that they believe you can improve only by knowing, and North American tend to feel very offended in those situations. Lack of conversational skills like interrupting people, talking over others, talking louder when someone else tries to add to the conversation, talking at people instead of having an actual conversation. If I haven't said anything in the last 5 minutes of the conversation, you're being an asshole and holding me hostage with your conversation, sharing negative opinions or straight out saying insulting shit like it's a joke, usually to people they're friends with, and then when you call them out for the unacceptable behavior they act like they're being personally victimized when they've been being an inconsiderate asshole for the last 2 hours and all you said was, hey, you've been talking almost exclusively, maybe let someone else talk. For a long time, I was depressed to the point of contemplating suicide. I told my parents. My mom said I was just teenagery and my dad said that if I killed myself, he wouldn't be able to go on living. After that, I would tell them I'm fine, but things got even worse. Finally, after a while, I met someone I could talk to and things got better for me. Now I wouldn't say I was poorly raised. I had a decent childhood overall, roof over my head, food on my plate, all that, and they were supportive of my career choice as a writer, but my parents were always either working or irritable because of work, so I didn't really have anyone to go to. Neglecting to take care of their pets. Or, more importantly, not realizing that they cannot keep their animals properly. Being unwilling to admit that they aren't giving the animals the care they need to be healthy and happy. Refusing to rehome their pets. I want to get a pet snake someday, so I've been doing a bit of research and watching a lot of reptile videos on YT. The behavior mentioned above is particularly common when it comes to keeping reptiles as pets. Many people don't give their reptiles the enclosure/proper care they need, and the animals suffer for it. Like myself, they have many fucking mental issues, they feel like they need block out everyone or they'll get hurt, so they bottle everything up and fight any and every form of social contact, believing that they're always on their own forever and always. When they had to look after themselves throughout childhood and figure shit out themselves, like how to shave, or how to make some basic form of food, and how to speak up for themselves, but they don't, because no matter how hard they try, they're ignored or forgotten. Finding out they're trans and then having their life threatened by someone who's supposed to love and support you, but shocker, they don't, cause they're old-fashioned and apparently I'm the spawn of Satan and deserve to die. Being called lazy when they're just depressed cause no one will help them, so they drop out of year 10 and turn to smoking, drinking and prostitution. Yes, I was raised poorly and have a lot of issues, but that's me and I'm okay with who I am, a slutty, anxious, depressed trans mess. It's fun, trust me. I was raised by me grandmother BTWXD, it's great. Oh, and they can almost never be serious XD. When you have someone coming in from Denver who has never been to your state or your house and they are staying 5 nights with you and you have been pulling some overtime getting the house beautiful and very comfortable for them. And she doesn't say, "What a lovely place," or "Wow, I love your bold use of color," or "Wow, your place is almost a museum," which I have heard more than once, just comes in, sits down and starts playing a game on her phone. You don't have to say you like it, may not be your style, but it is eclectic and plenty of common decency adverbs to use. That was unacceptable to me. Damn, turning into my mom. I've worked in restaurants for almost 10 years, and in the last year and a half or so the entire industry has seen the worst of people, US. So here are the signs that make me think someone was raised poorly while dining out. When the server greets you and you don't make eye contact or even acknowledge them. If you eat your food, then claim afterwards that you didn't like it and don't want to pay for it. Non-tippers. Customers that get mad at the servers for how long their food takes. Customers that treat restaurants like it's their own house, for example, moving tables around without staff's permission, requesting the thermostat to be changed, constantly asking to change the TVs, etc. Threatening staff members with, "I know the owner." Yes, we know the owner too. We actually know the owner better than you. Requesting items that aren't on the menu. I could go on and on. But these are the very small things that restaurant staff and fellow customers notice about you in public if you do those things. It's annoying. So it depends on the context of poorly raised. If we're talking an entitled asshole, I'd say someone who is never at fault, and who is always the victim. However, some poorly raised habits can come from people who had traumatic events in their childhood, or in the womb. For instance, someone who seems immature for their age, doesn't have a job, doesn't take responsibility for their actions, makes excuses, could be suffering from trauma inflicted in the womb, such as drugs or alcohol. It causes brains to be wired differently. Simple tasks for ordinary people could be much harder. They may seem lazy, or perhaps raised with no manners. Also, if they had traumatic events after birth, being poor, poorly educated, having a survival mindset, can create humans who feel entitled. Humans who hoard food, overeat out of fear of lack of food. This is a very broad question. It almost feels a tad mean-spirited. Because who the hell really knows what every person has been through, right? Like maybe their parents did all the right things, and their kid is still an asshole. They do not know basic courtesy like hello, thank you, or goodbye. They think they own the world. They do not know what respect is, talk loudly, and have often anger issue when someone say no to them, or when things do not go in their way. Violence and insults are often their first response to a disagreement, because they do not have the vocabulary to argue with someone. They tend to believe that being vulgar is a synonym of self-confidence, and that rules are for everyone except themselves. They will be always better than you. If they want something, they take it, in a way or another, and only see their parent like a bank account or dead weight. They do not respect other property and do not give a shit about the value of things. Often, they do not care about morality. But if they are in front of authority, they will be arrogant and provocative, blaming everyone but themselves. It is never their fault. They expect you to be practically their slave, to show loyalty in every circumstances, but they only use you as a stooge. Being far from eyes, far from heart. It means that if you are too far from their localization, they will forget you in a couple of weeks to find someone else. Destroying things at parks. We have a little park in front of our house and it has a grass soccer field with wire fence around it that keeps the balls from getting lost. Those freaking teenagers roam around with loud music and manage to cut some holes, still sewing it, in it like fooing beavers, and there is a big door that you can get in from and it never gets locked, and they sometimes get motorcycles inside and manage to clear out the field like they are some stupid goats. They actually replaced it so many times over the years, and almost everywhere in Thea Park has broken glass in it to the point that you might need to wear your shoes while playing in the sand field. I maybe sound like a boomer, but those teens are really annoying. I think being ungrateful for some things. Not saying I was brilliantly raised, but I was taught to always say thank you for gifts, regardless of whether it was a banana or something substantial. Some of my husband's friends will flat out say, I don't like this gift, I don't want it, etc. Which I feel is a sign they weren't brought up well or with manners. I was also always brought up to take a small gift of appreciation to someone's house when they invite you for dinner. Whether it's a box of chocolates, or some snacks, or a bottle of wine. Again, with some of my husband's friends, we were recently invited to have a barbecue at their house. But they then asked us to supply all the meat and actually bring our own barbecue. We would always bring our own meat anyway, but to supply for 7 others as well when we are not hosting? I guess I was taught when you are hosting, you are meant to host, supply majority of food, cooking utensils, lol. Not expect others to do that.